It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we talk your property news, your real estate, 7 days a week with our experts right around Australia. We're very fortunate, of course, in any calendar year. We're talking to literally hundreds and hundreds of these real estate commentators, they're real estate agents, they're economists, of course, you name it, we are talking to them. And we are up to a Wednesday, July the 24th today. And if you're a first-time buyer, and just sort of trying to work out the best possible area for the best possible price, well, we've kind of stepped over that. We've talked about some of these regional areas. I think it's fair to say that we're going to this morning be talking about a geographical location that you might not have considered if you are a first-time buyer. And for example, how does this sound? A unique Aussie home on the market for under $100,000. Ideally suited for those who appreciate solitude. This was reported by Domain the other day. It is a very tiny town of Melbourne in Queensland, and we'll talk about the property. But firstly, I want to bring in Janessa Bidgood of Outback Auctions and Real Estate. And Janessa, welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Thank you very much, Craig. I'm glad to be here.
I think a lot of people probably have not heard of Melbourne, so perhaps just put it in the geographical place for everybody to grab hold of. I know that it mentions that it's 50 k's south of Cloncurry, but a lot of people might not know where Cloncurry is.
That's right. We're pretty used to explaining our location to people. So I guess the best way to explain where we are is when you picture the Northern Territory boundary or border, you've got Mount Isa just inland from there. We're just inland again from there. It's in the middle of nowhere for some people, but it's a nice location for the rest of us.
I heard that this was the birthplace of the Royal Flying Doctors Service. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's a strongly contended issue. They Longreach, Winton and Cloncurry all dispute a little bit where the Royal Flying Doctor started, but Cloncurry is a very, very fundamental part of that story, and we celebrate it strongly. So we've got a John Flynn Place memorial here. The full story about the Royal Flying Doctor is housed there, and we've had many events that celebrate that very fundamental story for Australia.
Now, when we talk about if you want to be on your own, have that solitude, some people think that a lot of these areas are very, very small, but it was reported that Melbourne's population is less than 10 people. Is that right?
Yeah, Melbourne's our special little place. Cloncurry is a small place in itself. We have about 3,200 people in our shire, and we've got these special little towns that make up the outside of it. So Melbourne is one of them. It's about 50 k south of where we are, and there's approximately 10 people that live there. Some of them come and go from the towns and go there on the weekends. But it is definitely a quiet location if you're looking to get away from the world and just enjoy a bit of scenery, a lot of bird life, and a river that runs once a year.
So why would somebody want to live there apart from the obvious, which is the fantastic sale price of property?
Look, we've had a lot of inquiry for that property, and it's all been from people who are either retired or they are not working. You know, some people are on disability pensions, etc., and they look to find somewhere that they feel safe, they feel secure, and they feel calm. And that place leads itself to all those people where you genuinely can enjoy your own space. You know you've got neighbours, but not many of them. And it's a cheap way to own your own property, which is not an option around Australia very much at the moment.
So if we talk about the Shire, you mentioned around about 3,200 people. Just how many of these first home buyer inquiries are you getting at the moment?
We're seeing a lot of first home buyers buy in Cloncurry. So there's a lot of inquiry from around Australia, but a lot of first home buyers are seeing the opportunity to buy a house in Cloncurry that is cheaper than nearly anywhere and be able to pay the same as they were paying in rent, if not cheaper. and then secure a little bit of a future for themselves. It helps that our market is going up at the moment, which I imagine it is all over Australia, but it's certainly giving people that little bit of a stepping stone. They're buying a house for somewhere possibly in the hundreds. Next minute, it's worth 150, it's worth 200. They've got a little bit of equity, and it gives them a step up in their future. So it's really good to see.
Yes, I'm just looking at the median price there of around 211,000. This is in Cloncurry, so you don't need much of a deposit to get into the market.
That's right, and it buys you a really nice property. So $200,000 at the moment in Cloncurry gets you a neat 3-bed, 1-bath house on a good size block. So 800 to 1,000 square metres is standard for us, in a good area that you can come home to every night knowing it's yours and be comfortable. $200,000 is not necessarily a tear down job that needs to be fixed up. It's a neat home in Cloncurry.
This is 2005 pricing, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, that's the reality for us, and it constantly blows my mind that more people haven't jumped onto this. Living on the coast, I imagine it's very difficult for a young family, particularly ones on a single income, to try and step into ownership when they're talking prices of 900 plus for a 400 square metre block with a house on it. In Cloncurry, you can make just as good an income from the mining industry and agricultural industry and train industry that we offer, but you can own a house for very, very, like a whole lot less than you could anywhere else in Australia.
Now, I know that the first-time buyers will want me to ask connectivity. What is happening in terms of broadband? Is that freely available?
Look, that's a question we get way too often nowadays. We've actually had a few funny stories where tenants drive around town looking for the closest node, which is news to me. I'm not savvy with gaming, but they look for the closest node to the closest house and they rent that house because it's got the best internet. Cloncurry's getting up to speed with it. So we've recently had a company come to town that did some of the hardwiring NBN cabling, and I think that's only going to progress further and further. But on a general day-to-day, we have no issues with internet. So we all run businesses. We all connected well enough with the rest of the world. So that's not a problem. We're not in the middle of nowhere as far as that's concerned.
Now, we talk about the median price being 211,000. I'm curious now to ask you about the rental market, because there could well be people that are not in a position to buy, but they are renting. So what is the median rent cost?
Look, rents have gone up a little bit here, like they have everywhere, and that's due to demand. So we've seen a real closing of the rental market, where we're down to one property available at the moment in Cloncurry. And so I guess a standard sort of 3-bed, 1-bath house, you're still paying around that $350 to $380 a week for. I guess that probably still seems cheap compared to the coast, but that is on the higher side for Cloncurry, given the last couple of years where it would have been closer to $300. So it's starting to get to the point where if you're paying somewhere near $400 a week for a standard rental, potentially it is worth buying, and that's why a lot of first home buyers are making that decision.
And if somebody does buy, how would they add value to their property in your region?
Look, that's a big thing that we don't necessarily see people doing, and I think that's where buyers have made a really good move. So when you buy a property in Cloncurry, if it's on the older side, which we have a number of older properties, when those buyers buy them and they add that little bit of value, so they give them a paint job, they add a new kitchen, they do stuff that they can do at a reasonable budget, but it gives the property a really nice tidy up. The other thing is yard maintenance. We see a little bit of a lack of that, given that we've got a very heavy worker style tenant here, so they're working 12 hours a day coming home to bed. So if a buyer buys a property, gives it a quick tidy up and does a really nice yard renovation, they tend to add value and they tend to turn their property over really nicely and make a nice profit.
Well, it is a Wednesday morning. We are in Cloncurry. We will be back and have a look at that listing after this.
We dive deep into topics like buying, selling, investing, and maximising your property's value. From mortgage advice to the latest property data, your real estate journey starts here.
All right, let's have a look at some of the median house and unit prices for a couple of cities across Australia. We go to Hobart, where the median house price is just over $697,000. The median unit price, $524,000. And let's go to Canberra, where the median house price is at $961,000 and the unit price $583,587. So those are a couple of cities and some of the price median breakdowns for you this morning.
We are more than just a real estate podcast. Follow each week all of the main talking points and know your property.
And it is a Real Estate Wednesday. I guess we should take a look at this listing because it was listed for under $100,000. You were saying to me off air that you've got this under contract at the moment, but tell us a little bit about this $100,000 property and what people would be getting.
Look, it's such an interesting concept. It's been on the market for about a year, and it was listed a little bit higher than 100. But this property's gone off in the last week. We must have had somewhere between 80 and 100 phone calls since Monday. But it is now under contract. So it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Now you can tell from the insides of it that it used to be a different floor plan, so it's been added to over the years. It's an older style house. Short Street is known as one of Cloncurry's oldest streets. So I imagine this property it's probably built in the 50s or 60s. And you do get a old style home for that money, but you get a home that you can live in. Now, when you're talking $99,000, I mean, some vehicles cost $99,000 these days. So potentially you got the option of buying a new car, or you could buy a house, own your own piece of land, and it's a generous sized block. You've got 1,000 square metres. You're walking distance to town. It's not a bad life. So it really, it surprised me that it hasn't been snapped up sooner, but it's a lucky young lady has decided to secure it under contract, and I think she's made a very good decision.
Yeah, don't get me talking about cars, because if you want to remain poor and spend plenty of money on cars, you will never be rich, that is for sure. Now, the Brisbane median house price is $924,000 and change, so we're talking substantially less for this particular property, and it doesn't surprise me that you've had a lot of inquiries. I guess that this sort of media attention, I mean, this is great for you. You don't have to pay for it. You're getting a free plug from us, and the inquiries just flow forward.
That's right. We can't complain. And look, I guess the side note to it is this property's been secured under contract, but there are other properties that are similar and also, I guess, in the same range of $100,000 to $200,000, which is still an insanely good price for a neat 3-bedroom home. It really highlights that those properties are out there. So if you're a family on the coast that is struggling to make ends meet and goes, there are better ways to do this, surely, maybe we throw caution to the wind, move our family and see what happens. There's been plenty of people that started that story like that in Cloncurry, and 25 years later, they're still here.
Wow. Yeah, great story, Janessa. Great to hear what is going on there in Cloncurry as well as Melbourne, and thanks for sort of breaking all of that down and coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. Appreciate it. Have a fantastic Wednesday.
No worries, Craig. Thanks for your time.
Gain insights with exclusive conversations from real estate professionals about buying, selling and investing across Australia.
And more so, probably not as many leaving. That's always been a battle for Toowoomba, is keeping your younger crowd, obviously, when they finish school and, want to look at universities and professionals and all that sort of stuff. We're not losing them anymore. They're sticking around.
Of course, it is all about the dollars and cents. If you look at the data from CoreLogic, it is telling us that properties are selling in Toowoomba for a 3-bedder is around that $500K, but probably you don't get that much for $500K these days.
You can get some of your older ones, possibly built in the 80s, like a small brick 3-bedroom thing, around that sort of, I guess, high 5s to 600. But yeah, certainly the unit market has picked up. And again, that probably comes back to the affordability. It's got a roof and walls and it's in a good spot. So it ticks a few boxes.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.